Hi, Suhas.
Hi, Shruti.
Congratulations on your admit to IIM Lucknow and IIM Indore.
Thank you so much.
How has your work experience been? Please share your work experience and your profile with us, and also the motivation of coming back to India and how the MBA comes into place.
I come from a mechanical engineering background. So I did my undergrad in India back in 2012. I did my undergrad in mechanical engineering, like I said, from Bangalore. And then I worked in an aerospace industry for 1 year. So after that, I felt like there was a need for better understanding of how the product decisions are made and everything, which was mostly based out of the offshore or the headquarters, which is based in the US. So I was very curious to see how the decisions are made, and that's what motivated me to do my master's in Arizona State University. Once I went there, I kind of finished my master's again in mechanical engineering. So I was more at the mercy of what was available. I did not have a lot of choice, so I ended up more on the tank trailer industry. So I worked there for 1 year, which was kind of an oil and gas sector industry. And that is when there was a downturn in the industry. Unfortunately, I had to find a different opportunity at that point because the company I was working at moved their operations to Mexico. And then I ended up with my current or my with my latest company called Furbia, where I've been associated with that company for the past 7.5 years. So over there, I started off as a product engineer and in a valve team, and then grew up with product development lead, engineering technical lead, and finally, before uh, I started my journey in the past couple of years, I've been with the sales and business development role with the organization. And this is an automotive company, so it's a tier one automotive supplier.
Yes, and in your profile, there are so many things which are typical. Working in the US for so long, you have a work experience of around 9 years now. So you have a work experience of around 9.5 years, and that too with automotive products. So, all of these coming together, what were the important criteria for you when you were choosing the MBA programs?
So a couple of things were basically so once I actually went to my sales and business development role, I was kind of keen on doing an MBA even let's say 5 years before as well. But at that point in time, it was too vague for me. I just wanted for the sake of learning experience. As I transitioned to my sales and business development role, it was like something, how us engineers are more, I would say, focused on like say a binary system, like either a white or a black or a zero or a one, right? So we try to deal with that a lot with our day in and day out, and we like reasoning everything. But then I realized once I was in sales and business development role, it's not always like that. We have to deal with a lot of gray matter where there is no right answer, right? So that kind of really triggered the spark rather. And also, I was talking to one of my mentors who had done MBA at 4 So he actually really mentioned to me how MBA really helped him. So he's in a management role right now, like a very senior leadership role, and he told me how MBA helped him, with his career, and how important was that for his growth, and also for understanding the industry and being able to make a bigger impact to the organization. So these are the things which really, having a lot of conversation with him felt like, I think these are some of the things that I wanted, but I never really had that pathway at that point. After having all these conversations, it became a lot more prominent that, this is what I want to do. And yeah, finally I gave it a shot, and yeah, here I am.
How was it going back to the books? The first tryst is with the GMAT preparation. So how was the GMAT preparation, and what were the things that you would like to, pinpoint as do's and don'ts for future applicants?
Especially for working individuals who have been away from books, I think trying to get back to the grind is difficult. But I would say GMAT is a great segue to an MBA because, MBA programs are quite rigorous, right? Especially if you take a 1 year MBA program, these are very rigorous for executives in India. So I kind of took that on as a challenge, as a stepping stone for my prep. First of all, I was also very debating between if I have to take a GRE or a GMAT because I had already written GRE for my master's in US. So I was kind of familiar with the format and how everything was with the test. But then I wanted to actually take GMAT because GMAT was very specifically designed for management course. When I started learning as well, I realized that, this is very tailor-made for the management individuals, because that is pretty much what we deal with day in and day out. That's how I picked GMAT. It was very difficult, so I had to dedicate some time. I think the consistency was the key. My preparation was very on and off. I started for a couple of months, then something else came up with work, and then I realized, I have to prioritize this because this is what I really wanted to do. So it had to be some late night studies and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I had some support with my family as well, so I was able to somehow push through that hurdle.
And any resources or any very specific material on the GMAT preparation that you would like to suggest? You've written the classic edition for both the attempts, right?
Okay.
Yes.
Like many people do, I went to GMAT club. I was kind of trying to look for like some of the best resources that I could do at my own pace. That was one of my requirement because I could not go to a regular class or anything. So I preferred like an online material. I ended up with eGMAT as a platform. The platform is great for all the basics. I mean, especially coming from engineering background, again, my weak spot was English, or the verbal section of it, especially the sentence correction push. Once I had to learn with all the concepts and everything, it was very, very helpful in getting my base with online platform. I felt like I knew everything. I felt like I was lacking some test taking strategy. I did give a few attempts. I think I was able to crack it finally in my third attempt. So the first attempt, I kind of had brushed through the concepts, and that's when actually, we connected, and you gave me some insights about how important test taking strategies are, especially for an exam like this. It's not designed to complete it very comfortably. So that is what I had to register in my mind. And I think you gave me some very good resource suggestions, like Aristotle for the first 2 pages said, this course is, there are few things that you can let go and still get a decent score. Once I got that in my head, I think my score immediately went beyond 700 immediately. And I started taking a few mocks at that point, which really helped me boost my confidence also. Again, at the end exam, I felt like I fell short on a few points. I had to make a few rush through 2 3 questions. It was very reflective of my mocks. So yeah, no, I really have to thank you for that. I would say, the dimag ka batti moment. So thank you for that, because otherwise I would have probably been in that loop and I would have never been able to cross my GMAT hurdle. So I think I owe it to you for that.
You have to actually think differently about these things once you get stuck at a certain point. So coming to the next part of the application process. How was the MBA application process for you, and what do you think are the key steps that one should focus on? How much time do you devote on the GMAT, and then how much time on the application? So what worked for you?
So GMAT, again, there are a few things that I would suggest for the new aspirants. They can do a lot better than what I did. So I would say, I think if somebody who's really sharp, who's really very close to the say quant and verbal side of it, or who has a very strong base, can probably do GMAT within 2 months. But I would say for somebody who's like starting like fresh with, like, like me, I would keep a minimum of 3 months, dedicated 3 months. When I say that, at least 2 months on or 2 hours on an average every day, kind of preparation to kind of get that engine cranking. So GMAT at least and also we got to give some buffer for retakes, because not everybody cracks it at the first go. So I would say between 3 and 4.5 months is what they should dedicate for GMAT prep. And for applications as well, it is a good couple of months. And I would say application is a wonderful process because it's a lot of self exploration, self reflection, what you've done till date. And I think that's the most part of it. I think the biggest part of it is trying to see, for the past how many ever years of work experience and whatever you've done even before that, trying to put it all together in one place, and then try to build a story of, let's say, where you were, and what the MBA standard is going to help. So it's that story, that narration that comes along at that point. And I think that is where, um, I was not one of the best, though I was in the sales department in my last role. I felt like I was not very great at storytelling, and also self reflection on because what do you even think of, right? And that's when I think, I reached out to you, and I think you as a mentor has been like phenomenal from day one. Very, you were always there whenever I had questions, right from day one of our interaction, where I had some questions about how do I even go about this, right? And what kind of goes into the, like, you had some specific points where I didn't know even what to write about those. Those questions kind of intrigued a lot of thought processes in me, where I had to go back to a lot of instances, which probably I would have never done to that level of deep thinking. You really was a great mentor in that perspective, where you knew very clearly like what each school looked for, which is very important. I think one sort of a very base is not going to work for every school, because every school looks for a different thing in a candidate. Though it's all MBA school, I would say, for example, IIMs versus ISB, right? They look at very different aspects in a student, though it is holistically very similar, but still the stories that kind of uh, are expected, or that they look out for, are quite different. And I think that expertise is something was of great value for me, and trying to get those all together and put a very compelling story for each school. I was fortunate enough to get interviews from almost every school I applied for. So yeah, I mean, all thanks to you for that.
Yes. And you did quite some bit of research on IM versus ISB. Would you like to share
Mhm.
some insights that you got as an applicant? What were the things that you were considering or what were important for you?
That's a question that pretty much every applicant who has some experience goes through. First, I was like, okay, I knew these schools come in with a great brand value. That is where I kind of started off. I'm like, okay, this is something that I'm going to carry with me for the rest of my life. Any of these schools would not do any harm. The brand was always going to be there, and it's a very globally recognized brand. And then the next thing was I wanted to talk to a few alums. So actually, I reached out to a few alums, let's say, who were of my experience. For example, ISB. ISB is perceived to have a lot of younger crowd. Like, say, it's more tailored. I would say the intake is more focused on, let's say, more less than 5 years of experience versus the IIMs who have greater than 5 years of experience. My biggest question was MBA. I was also big on peer learning experience, because I think that's a big part of MBA. So I was talking to a lot of them. I was like, how is it going to be? How the interaction is going to be in a class where, there are more individuals with, let's say, 2 years of experience or like 3 years of experience. A couple of the people from ISB who are 10 years, 10 plus years of experience, they gave me a really nice example. So even a 2 year, they are there at that school because of, the caliber or the learning that they've already had, and they are actually experts in the industry, though they have been there for just 2 years. Let's say they are from a healthcare background, right? They would know a lot more than I would do about healthcare. So there is always going to be learning in the class. So that kind of really, made me feel a lot comfortable applying to ISB too. At the end of the day, it's more on you. So the school and the academic wise, I think all these schools are phenomenal. They have great professors. That has just really blown my mind, like looking at the quality of professors and the research that they've been doing, and how current they're trying to make the curriculum. Learning wise, professor to student is almost pretty much similar in all the schools. And peer to peer interaction, like I just mentioned, even though they are younger, it can still be easily done.
Value addition.
And exactly. And at the end of the day, it's on you how you want to, what is your goal, and how you pave your path through all of these. So I think, and at the end of the day, that's what I felt, and that's what I really wanted to do. And I felt like, any of the schools, whatever, Indore or Lucknow, wherever I got into, I felt like picking any school would still not be a bad choice, based on
Absolutely.
specific preferences at that point.
You have to look at the timing of your application.
So ISP and IM interviews were very different, I would say. Again, this is something which I think anybody wouldn't know that easily, coming off of, like, what to expect out of these interviews. I think that's where, again, I have to give huge kudos to you, because you really helped me understand, like, how, what sort of mindset or what sort of interviews are driven with IMs versus ISB. So IIMs are, in my opinion, a lot more. So they come with themselves as a more academic institution per se, tag, and that's what they kind of market themselves as, where they are like more sort of an academic institution. and they are more focused on your knowledge skills, on your understanding of the industry, and on the understandings of the current affairs. So most of their questions are revolving around those. So I had to have a very specific strategy of going through those. For example, the biggest part of trying to know about the Indian ecosystem, which I was aware. And I think that's where you really helped me, you and your team really helped me with trying to understand with all the important topics that were happening within India. So I had to kind of up my pace on those things for IIM interviews very specifically. And yeah, I mean, my interview with Lucknow and Indore were very different per se. And one thing I have to mention here is uh, how important it is to be very genuine what you put on your essays and what you put on your application. Because you wouldn't believe, in one of my interviews, they even asked me about my master's thesis project, you know. So that is the level of detail they go through. That was just a random one pointer that I had put on my application, and they literally asked me on that. So I would say be very genuine, be very authentic in your application, what you write. That's one of the biggest tips that I would highlight. And that was with the IM interviews. Again, coming to the ISB interview, it was more with alums. It was driven by alums, and it was a very more conversational. And again, they also dug too deep into my professional experience, because I come here with almost close to 10 years of work experience, right? So it was more about storytelling here. It was more about trying to connect the dots here. It was not more about, like, say, general knowledge or what's happening in the country. More than that, they were more focused on my storytelling aspect of it. And again, I think you rightly guided me there to mention that, how I had to prepare differently for both of these, and it really helped me a lot.
Great. So finally, you've given a lot of tips and suggestions. So is there anything that you would really want to pinpoint on as on the preparation that the future MBA aspirant should look at? So we have what you've already covered. Apart from that, in case you would like to share any do's and don'ts.
Just to summarize it all, maybe, I think that way I'll probably get all of them in one shot. I think one is, give yourself enough time for for your GMAT, and preferably, if you can, try to go for round one, round two. There are definitely more options to apply to at that point. Be very thorough with your application. Don't apply unless you're really ready with it. Give again enough time, a couple of months for that too. Talk to alums. I would say try to align your goals. Try to do a thorough research of alums and try to talk to them. Try to get. That's when you would know where you want to go. So I would say talking to some of the alumni was very helpful for me to pick which school I want to go to. Don't take this as like a burden. I would say enjoy the journey, enjoy the process, because at the end of the day, this is what is going to make you ready for the actual coursework, which is going to be very, I would say, intense, because it's a very compressed program. It's going to make you ready for it, and you can just take it forward from there. Enjoy this whole process, and whole process of self-reflection, getting ready for your MBA course. Whoever has been on the edge of whether trying to do it or not, just take the plunge. You will be there.
What were the criteria that were important for you for selecting an MBA admissions consultant, or any feedback for us?
The biggest thing was, whoever was very honest with me. I wanted somebody who was more sort of a mentor for me, who can be like a friend and try to understand points are, and maybe, with my level of experience, I can give you suggestions. Somebody who's had some experience for sure, and also who can be more sort of like a friend, and who's a lot more available at all times. For me, as though we were in different time zones, you were always very accommodative. Whenever I needed help, you were always there. So thank you so much for that. Coming from a different time zone, very flexible that way, and also guide it, every step, and not get annoyed with some of the stupid questions that I might have with my disappointment or whatever when I had to share. I think you really helped me put things to perspective very easily. So I think giving a very candid feedback, and putting things to perspective, and staying neutral and level headed is something I look for from a consulting, or even from a mentorship team. I'm grateful for you and your team, for all the help, for all the guidance that I've received.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time today. And Congratulations once again. Do look forward to meeting you very soon and keep in touch.
Absolutely.